Welcome back to Omni Garage. So a couple of months ago I did an oil change on the Ryobi Subaru 190cc lawnmower, and ever since then I've got this sort of surging problem. When I'm mowing the lawns, what happens is it runs along at normal RPM and then we get a drop in RPM and it comes back up. Runs along for a little bit and then drops back down in RPM. It sort of creates this surging noise. It's a real sort of annoying noise, and as you can hear throughout the neighborhood, usually at the weekend you hear everyone else's lawnmower making that same surging noise. It's pretty irritating, and I don't want to be that guy. So I've checked out a few things on this lawnmower. So looked at the spark plugs, they all look fine, they're all nice and clean. Oil, changed that a couple of months ago, so that's not the problem. I've looked at the the air filter on here, that's also clean, so that ain't the problem. So now I'm going to sort of dive in a little bit deeper, and I'm going to have a look at the carburetor and see if that's blocked and see if that's the cause of causing this surging noise on this lawnmower. So I'm going to try super hard to get the right angles for you. I'm doing the camera work and also trying to fumble my way through this. I'm definitely not an expert on removing carburetors from small engines, but we'll give it a nudge. So you want to make sure that your fuel line is off, because we're going to be removing this airbox, and underneath there is the carburetor. So fuel line is off. Remove this airbox. So this filter's pretty clean. I mean, I only swapped this out when I did the oil change, so I'm happy with the way that's going. And under here is there's a couple of bolts here that we need to remove, and hopefully that should come off and sort of expose that carburetor underneath. These are 10mm. Make sure you've got it on the right way, lefty-loosey. So we've got a couple of lines underneath here that we just need to be careful about. One of them is the fuel line, and there's I think it's an air line behind there and another line on top. So when we do take these lines out, there is going to be a little bit of residual fuel that's going to sort of drip out underneath here, but as long as you've got that turned off, you shouldn't have too much dripping out. This is just a clamp here, so you squeeze it together and it should just pop out. Meant to just pop out. And I suppose I better get a rag because we'll have fluid dropping into the gas rather than everywhere and what. I don't want to make too much of a mess. So that's the air box off. I am struggling a little bit to get this fuel line off. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a clean with some carb cleaner just on top here, just to get rid of that dirt and stuff. There is still fuel dripping out of it. So that carb cleaner has done a really nice job of cleaning up the sort of external parts of this. You probably don't need to do that, but it's just nice to be working with a nice clean piece of equipment. So we want to remove this 10mm nut to sort of get access to inside this bulb here, because this is the important part of the carburetor that we need to clean out. So there still might be a little bit of fuel left in this bulb, so just be careful to undo it this way. Now there's not too much left in there. That's the inside of the bulb. And inside that we have this float, so this is this white piece, and inside there is a little pin that holds the float in place. So just remove that pin, take this float off. Just be really careful, because on the other side of this float here is a little mechanism there that sits inside that little circle there. So just make sure you take that off in the correct way so you put it back right. Now inside here is an emulsion tube, and within that emulsion tube is the jet that we want to clean out, because that could be the cause of causing our surging. Using a flathead screwdriver you can unscrew that emulsion tube. I don't know if you can actually see inside there, but there's two little areas where your little screwdriver will fit in there. So there's tiny little holes on there that will blow out with an air compressor, and we'll also clean it with a little bit of carburetor cleaner and hopefully blow out those holes. It doesn't look too dirty, but I suppose you never know. I suppose you could also get like a little tiny little pipe cleaner or a little needle in there, and also just put that in and out of that hole there and see if you can clean that out. The last little place to look at is on the back here. You have a little throttle control, well, what I think is the throttle control. You want to take this out and you want to remove the screw, because again there's another little small jet in underneath here that you want to clean out. That also could be the problem of causing the surging. So you just want to take note of how far this black one's actually screwed in, because you kind of want to screw that into the same sort of level. So it's only sort of one thread on there, so we can remove that. It's a funny little hole there, so you could use your little flathead screwdriver again. So there we are, removing that. And then that's what we want to remove to access that jet. Probably need a bigger size. And again, that was in pretty tight. So you're probably not going to see there, but inside there is a tiny little pinhole, which is another little jet. So you want to get your pin, clean it out, maybe use a little bit of carb cleaner to clean that out and blow it out with your air compressor. Sweet, so everything's nice and clean. Now we can sort of start to assemble it back together again. So first of all, putting our screw back in. That does have a little washer on the end of there. Now this was in pretty tight last time. Screw this one back in. Now this had only been sort of the first thread through. Now you kind of want to put that back to the same setting, because I think that's part of your idle response. You can see it coming through there. It was just on that last, well, not the last, but that first little thread there. So now to insert this emulsion tube back into there, you want it so that the end with the big hole on either side is at the top, or sticking out that way. So this side here's got no hole, so that's the side that's going to go on first. And then once that's in place, we can then screw that back on. And then in goes our float. Again, make sure that pin's in place at the bottom there. And then this pin here just then slides through like so. And now we can sort of reinstall the bowl back on. Put the nut back on, so that nut's also got a washer on, so make sure you've got that in touch. And that's a 10mm. There we are. So that's the bulk of it put back together. So now we're ready to reinstall the carburetor. Now, putting this on, these gaskets here are direction specific, so they're not perfectly oval, they're sort of slightly offset from one another. Now the first step is we want to put this plastic sleeve back on. So I remember what way I took it off. This part here is sort of sticking out, whereas on this side it wasn't. So this is the part, this is the back side, this is the front side. So we slide that back on. I suppose in the perfect world, if you had new gaskets, that would be really nice to replace these. And now the second gasket, so this one here doesn't have a hole on the outside here, whereas this one does. So this is the hole that goes on the carburetor. This is the one that's going to go onto this plastic side here. I'm not sure if putting it on this way is actually the correct way, but we've got to make sure that it all lines up. And you can see that that gasket there lines up with the plastic outline, so I got that up the right way. Then, time to put on our carburetor. Remember that the throttle body and stuff is at the back here, so that's the side that's going to be the closest to here. And again, just checking to make sure that those gaskets line up with the shape, and that all looks pretty good. Should probably actually put this choke part in first, really. There's two little holes on the top of that, so the bigger hole is for this bigger one and the smaller hole was for that little bit there. Right, those appear to be hooked in. And then this is the last gasket, so that's the one with the hole, because that little hole there needs to match that. On it goes there, and now we can install our airbox. Now when this came out, one of these little tubes here came out a little hole, so we can slide that back in. And these two little gaskets, or these two little O-rings, they look pretty munted, to be honest with you. See if I can put them on. It's probably not worth it, to be honest. And in fact, nah, scrap that. We ain't putting them back on. So here, you know, when you purge the motor, a couple of squeezes there, we've got to make sure that we put this tubing back on the top part here. There we are. Now we can bolt this airbox back down. At the same time we put that little line back on. There we are. I think these are 10mm, same as the other nut at the bottom. These don't have to be critically tight. Air filter back in. And there we are, we can then put our cap on, and that's basically all put together again. So let's start it up and see if I've managed to fix the problem. It's taken a wee while to surge some of that petrol through. I can feel it coming. So you did notice at the beginning that when I did start the mower there was a bit of surging, but that sort of stopped after a little bit as that fuel was distributed through the mower. Now usually what happens is that when I've finished mowing this area, the surging starts, and it's constant throughout the rest of me mowing the lawn. In this case there doesn't appear to be any surging, so me pulling apart that carburetor has hopefully fixed that problem. So that's the very basic process of pulling apart this carburetor on this Ryobi Subaru engine and cleaning it out. And as you saw at the end there when I was mowing a few strips there, that the surging has stopped. So I've obviously done a pretty good job of cleaning out the carburetor. It now runs nice and smoothly. So if you're interested in how to change the oil on this model, go back, have a flick through some of the other videos there, and you'll find it there. I made a video on changing the oil. It's pretty easy as well. So that's it from Omni Garage. If you're interested in seeing any other Ryobi videos that we've made, check out the catalogue, but stay tuned for the next video and we'll catch you on the next one.